Welcome, everybody. How y'all doing?
Good.
Good from
Miss
sunny
you guys.
Jacksonville, Florida.
Yeah, Karl's got the vacay going on there. You enjoying it down there?
Yeah, so far it's been fun. Not bad at all.
Good, man.
Hopefully you're in East Jacksonville and not the rest of Jacksonville, because that's a pit.
You keep saying that.
I like Jacksonville, man. I love Jacksonville. I do.
It's cleaner than Phoenix. I was downtown yesterday. No graffiti. Streets are clean. No one's wandering around homeless.
Did you go to the wharf?
What's that?
Did you go to the wharf down there? That wharf area I was telling you about?
Cool.
Yeah, pretty cool area, right?
It's hot. No one was there because it was hot.
It is.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Muggy.
You know, the first day I was here, I was like, oh gosh, this sucks. And then, it was like my brother was saying, so that it gets over 93 or 94, it just rains. And then it gets cool again. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm already adjusting to 80 degrees. That's not too bad with humidity. So I can handle that.
Did you go to St. Augustine yesterday?
Yeah, it was so packed though. We couldn't find any parking. So we ended up stopping at a diner and getting breakfast. But it looks really cool.
You should have gone where I sent you to. That link. I'm telling you, the best seafood, fresh seafood, straight out. So good, man.
Well, I think in one way to do it, I saw all these little tour buses. And I was thinking, I was telling my brother, I'm like, $50?
No.
Why not? Those little no?
No, you don't need a tour bus. Look, there's Old Town St. Augustine that you walk through. There's the shops, blah, 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 all that stuff. And then there's the fort that's across the street. Those are really the only two things that are there in St. Augustine.
There's no parking there on a Saturday morning. It was stacked.
Oh, yeah, it's a packed place.
You got to get there early.
Yeah, packed place.
Well, yeah.
What you do is you park out and then grab an Uber. Take an Uber and get dropped off.
That's what we should have done. It's an Uber. That's a good idea, actually. Okay. Well, today is Canaveral. Then tomorrow we're fishing off the Jacksonville Pier and going to the beach. Tomorrow's a beach day. So
that's cool, man.
Use live bait.
Sushi yesterday.
Use live bait when you're fishing.
So Shawn just told me, though, that I have not had the best barbecue yet in my life because I haven't been up to North Carolina or South Carolina. So I have been to South Carolina, though, but I didn't have barbecue there. I was in Charleston.
Yeah.
The grits, though, I'm a big convert to grits, man, especially if they're like specialized grits. Like,
get the cheesy grits with the jalapenos.
Cheesy with shrimp.
Yep. Yeah.
Or
Yes.
lobster.
Yes. Shrimp and grits.
And
Shawn's talking right there.
Lots and lots of butter.
Oh yeah. Lots of butter.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh.
You get them cheesy shrimp and grits, and that is.
I'll tell you though, man,
it's amazing.
There's so much more variety here than in Utah. Holy shiz! Oh my goodness, man. It was like.
Have you ever been outside of Utah?
A lot more people.
Yes, I just forgot. I forgot how good the food is. I was here like one day, and I'm like, oh, I'm back to where the food's actually decent on the East Coast. Wow. Yeah, because Utah food is so bland.
The most homogeneous part of the country is Utah. Everything is bland and vanilla and the same, and there's just you get outside of it's and what?
White.
Yeah, that too. Well, that's changing, but yeah.
You know what I've realized though? I want you guys to think about this. I would bet you that there are more Mexican food restaurants in the United States than in Mexico. We were in.
That's because they don't call them that.
We saw my son yesterday, but I mean, it's just we were down seeing my boy in a small town called Winchester, Tennessee. Maybe has 2,000 people in it, and there were 4 Mexican restaurants in that town.
Oh, dude, there's Mexican restaurants all over the place here in Jacksonville,
and none of it was
everywhere. No, it's terrible. It is terrible. But they're all over the place. They'll be back-to-back Mexican restaurants.
The Cuban, I had a real Cuban sandwich, which was freaking amazing. I like that. But
those are amazing down in Florida. They really are.
Then my favorite convenience store.
And get the Cuban coffee if you can.
Wawa.
Wawas. Yeah, but you know what? You say Wawas until you go inside of a Buckee's. And once you go inside of a Buckee's.
I was going to tell you guys, first thing we hit on the way on the 95 on the way back from Orlando to Jacksonville, my brother says, we are going to stop at this place. And I'm like, what? And then we stop at that Bucky's right off of Daytona Bucky's. And so we get off the freeway, walk in, all of a sudden I'm like, holy crap, I can smell the brisket from here. So I had a brisket sandwich at 11 o'clock at night, and it was freaking good, man. As good as you can get in Utah.
Yeah, yep.
I'm like,
Bucky's is the bomb. It's like a Walmart gas station.
I would die of a heart attack in a year out here, man. Oh, man, it's bad out here.
And how about the beef jerky?
Oh,
like
they
probably have
of it. A whole wall. I was like, are you guys insane?
Insane.
Yeah. I've been to a Bucky's.
They have like a.
Yeah, well, I was at a Bucky's in Missouri, but it wasn't I mean, this place was like a monolith to Buckiness. I mean, it was huge.
Oh, man. And so, like, these Bucky's now that they build, if you were blind, okay, and if you went in one in South Carolina or Tennessee or Florida, like, it's the same exact layout in every single one. So if you were blind and you knew the layout in one of them, you would know the layout in every single one.
I was joking with my brother. I said, we could actually live here for 3 days or 4 days and not miss a beat, man. We could sleep in the corner and just eat and eat. And
it's awesome.
You could do it longer than that.
It is.
There's clothes.
Yeah.
You can buy clothes there. You can buy everything
there.
Yeah.
Camping materials. It's the place.
What's the biggest Bucky's in the world? Is it in Texas?
No, I think they're all the same size.
They're all the same.
They're all big. They're all huge like that. Yeah. And they all got like 90 gas pumps and.
Yeah, I was looking at that bay of gas pumps. I was just like, there's got to be 50 out here. I mean, this is crazy. I'm like, what's your gas station?
Yeah.
What's your pump number? Oh, I don't remember. Gosh, it was 33.
It's terrible, man.
Yeah, it
huge.
makes anything out west look tiny. Are there any Bucky's in Arizona yet, Shawn?
No.
Yes. Okay.
No, unfortunately. The best thing we have out here is QT Quick Trip, and it's pretty good, but it's nothing like that. It's nothing like the Bucky's or the Wawas. So.
The Orlando Airport.
The furthest west I've seen was Texas. That's as far west as I've seen them go.
No, Orlando's airport's pretty well designed, from what I could tell. I mean, it was really easy, a lot better than Salt Lake. I was just like, oh, this isn't
because of the people movers.
Yeah.
The little trams that they have going out to all the different terminals.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to remember the influx, like how many inbound people that airport receives daily, especially in the summertime. It's just
incredible,
insane.
Huh? Yeah, well,
it might be constructed that way because it's in a freaking swamp.
Well, if this is the worst
buildings.
If this is the worst weather Florida has to offer right now, other than the hurricanes, I'm like, this ain't bad at all. It's like nicer than Utah.
Give it a few more weeks.
August.
It gets worse.
August.
Yeah, August.
The humid hits. But summer nights, I mean, haven't the summer nights been awesome there?
Last night was. We were out at the beach watching the launch. Now, 2 nights before when we went out to see it and they scrubbed it, it was so humid there was a cloud all the way between here and Daytona on the freaking ground. I was just like, this is nasty.
They call that fog.
Fog.
And how about that? How about having to defrost the outside?
Oh,
yeah.
My sunglasses were fogging up just sitting on my head. I was just like, this is crazy.
I remember Tracy and I went on our honeymoon out to Florida. We went to Orlando. We went to Daytona. I remember day 2, Tracy was like, fuck this. I'm not doing my hair anymore. Just, like her hair was just flat. She's like, I can't do shit with my hair. You're going to have to like it how it is. I'm not doing it anymore.
Well, I thought it was for other reasons.
No.
Well, that I have yet to do out here in a humid environment. I wonder, Brent's probably an expert on that. I was going to say, how wet does it get?
Wait. What are we talking about?
Well, we'll talk about your subject soon, but we're kind of getting a preview right now. I'm just saying, in humid environments, Brent, how moist does it get?
Very. Carry some wipes with
Oh,
you.
geez. Have a few towels ready, huh? All right, not just for something else.
So,
Anyway,
before we get into this,
Shawn's like, oh shit.
but before we get into that, we got a new segment that we're going to do called Unusual News Stories Through the Week, and I've got one I picked out here. So, what if I told you that all of us would be a different age in one particular country? There's a particular country that counts age differently than the rest of the world does. Shawn and I would be 2 years older than what we are right now.
Oh,
It's
okay.
crazy. But up until recently, this country has decided to change the way they count a person's age. So, South Korea. This is an AP News story out of Seoul, Korea. As South Korea campaigns to retire an old age counting method that makes people a year or two older than they really are, children are among the few who seem most eager to stick with the past. I turned 6 and then became 5 again, says one child when a TV reporter asked her about a new law that went into effect on Wednesday that formalizes the international age counting method in administrative and civil laws and encourages people to tally their own ages accordingly. South Korea's traditional age counting custom considers every person 1 year old at birth and adds another year when the calendar hits January 1. So for myself, being born on November 23rd, I would have been 1 year old then, and then on New Year's Day, I would have been 2 on January 1st.
Wow.
What?
Yes.
Wait a minute.
That's trippy.
When you were born, you would be 1, and
So
then
they
when
count
you're
gestational?
yeah, you should count.
So you're 1 year old. Yeah, right when you come out, you are 1 year old, and then on January 1st, you become 2.
That sounds like a stupid law. I think it should be.
Isn't that crazy?
They're gonna change it. That should be gestational, but you got to figure out when mom and dad kind of are busy.
No, it's not. They're changing it so that they're accepting.
They're changing
traditional worldwide counting, and this is
correct.
This was a cultural thing that has been the case for whatever 1,000 years, probably. So
it says while the new law is the country's latest attempt to retire that method and standardize international age based on passing birthdays, it is not immediately clear what will actually change, putting aside the minor frustrations of children waiting for their birthdays. President Yoon Suk-yeol has described standardizing international ages as a key goal of his government, citing a need to reduce the social and administrative confusion and disputes. But officials in South Korea's Ministry of Government Legislation acknowledge the new law won't meaningfully change how the country's public services are done, as most are already based on international ages.
That's wild.
Still, the law was welcomed.
So we would have been 21 when we were 19.
Correct.
That's stupid. That's not right. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, Karl, what you're saying, Karl, is that you think that they should stay with their old law versus the new law.
Absolutely.
So where people are 2 years older
Karl,
than what they actually are.
I think you're misunderstanding, Karl. You see, they currently
are
under that rule.
The same one we are.
They're currently under the rule.
Under the same one we are?
No, they're not.
Okay, never mind.
No. Okay. That's what I'm saying. They're now deciding to do that.
Well, they have to get online with what we do, how we do it here. That's what it should be.
Listening comprehension skills.
I'm on vacation, man. I'm on vacation. I'm feeling like while you were talking, while you were reading that, I zoned out and I could feel the humidity collecting on my arms. What?
Karl, you got grits in your ears because you're not hearing. You're not comprehending what.
All right. So what you're saying is that freaking South Korea does some weird stuff, man. Not to be culturally inappropriate. I mean, I'm not saying they're. I mean, just anyway.
Careful.
Mm-hmm.
Actually,
we can edit. We can edit if we need to.
Now when our reviews come out, we got one. Carl Kristen hates South Koreans. That'll be the header on it.
I like K-pop. I like K-pop.
If you're gonna dislike Koreans, it needs to be the North.
They have good
Leave the Southern
candy.
Koreans alone.
The Northerners are a little weird, man.
Hey,
now how do they count age up north?
Well, I don't think they do, because
you don't get an age.
The average age.
You just get a number.
Yeah, they all die before they're 30. So
yeah,
you're unlucky. You got the wrong number, pal. To the
Terrible.
gulag you go. Anyway, okay. Well, that is kind of interesting, Brent. So the point of that is they're just messed up in South Korea.
No, the point is that Karl doesn't listen to shit that we say on here.
So how
Thank you, Shawn, for listening to my story. Thank you.
This whole thing. What would it help? How's it going to help us out?
Who said it was helping us out? I didn't even mention that in the story. It's an unusual news story that apparently.
It's a slow news week, everybody.
Oh my
it really
gosh.
is.
Oh.
Karl, repeat after me. Sorry, Brent, I really wasn't listening to what you were saying, and I just mumbled along with what was going on.
What I would like to say about this is, I understand why your mom and dad were always pissed off at you, because you just didn't listen.
All right, back to humidity and that subject that Shawn didn't want to talk about.
Typical kitten fan.
Yeah.
Typical kitten fan.
No wonder.
Let's talk about moisture again, Shawn. All right. You had an intriguing subject you wanted to talk about. Let's do it.
Well, I just thought it was interesting. So you guys know that I love history, and that I really I have a fascination of translation of one language from another. I can barely speak English properly, and I have this very deep interest in the language translations, modern and ancient, and all of that stuff. So I heard somebody describe the problem with translating ancient foreign languages into English as taking two different sets of blueprints, laying them on top of one another, and then trying to explain why the kitchen is actually the bathroom, right? So they don't match. Things don't match up, right? So there's the topic that I was trying to bring up is the attitudes of ancient sexuality versus modern sexuality, and how we understand things modernly very different than they did it anciently. So what do you think about that?
So you kind of brought up the topic of Sodom and Gomorrah, and I think, when we talk about stories that are related in the Bible, I think that's probably one that stands out the most. I guess I'm not going to say overall belief, but some of the things that were taught on that is it was destroyed because of the type of sexuality that they were having in there, that there was a lot of homosexuality going on, and God cleaned all that out and all that stuff. That's how some people have interpreted that. However, some of it have interpreted as different reasons, because some of it from pride, that they had extreme pride, that it was kind of almost like I got to do better than what the Johnsons are doing. I got to get the more luxurious house than what they have, and so on and so forth. So I think that there's a lot of different angles that could be taken with that, because nowhere in there does it say exactly why it was destroyed. It says it was a very wicked city and was destroyed.
All I can say based on what I read, Shawn, or watched, was I would want to be an older man and kind of rich, because I would not want to be a catcher. I would want to be the pitcher. So that's all I can say.
So you're saying that you're okay with it as long as you're the one doing it?
As long as I'm giving and not receiving.
As long as, yeah. So there's actually a lot to that culturally.
Yeah.
And I can explain that a little bit. But to go back to what Brent is talking about, specifically, the story that you're talking about, the reason why it was destroyed. So there's you go into that story. There's a couple of angels that go into Sodom, the city of Sodom, right? And they come across Lot, correct? It's Lot, and
Parking.
not parking, just Lot, the guy whose wife turned into a pillar of salt, right? So
He had a brother named
he
Little.
did actually.
What was her name? Piss Salter? What was her salt pillar? What did they call her?
Got real salty, I heard.
She was really salty. Yes.
Why are you so salty?
Why are you so salty,
baby?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Saucy. So anyway, so he has these two angels staying with him, and the people came to see them, and they told. I'm just paraphrasing, so this is not in great detail, but they told Lot that they wanted him to send out the two men. They didn't know they were angels. They wanted them to send them out so that they could know them, right? So, and you guys know what the biblical term "know" means, right?
No, baby.
To know somebody in biblical terms. Do you know what that means?
You mean like you and Brent know each other?
Humpty Dumpty.
Like
I don't know Brent biblically. No, I never have. So for those who don't know, to know a person biblically is to have sexual relations with them. So this crowd of men wanted to basically rape the men that he was hosting. So that's where
they wanted to bang an angel.
Well, is it considered rape if it's willingly given and traditional?
Well, it wasn't.
Okay.
At this point, it wasn't. It wasn't. So and basically, to just and Lot refused to do it. He even offered to send out his daughters so that they could know his daughters, right? So that's where the world gets it being related to homosexuality, but it has nothing to do with that, nothing at all. To narrow it down, basically what it comes down to is the people of Sodom were inhospitable to foreigners and strangers of the land. They were not welcoming. So they were xenophobic, basically. If you weren't from Sodom, they didn't want you in the area. So
nothing to do with sexuality?
Nothing. Not one thing.
So those angels were looked on like Californians are looked on.
Yeah.
Nobody wants them around. Just go back to where you came from.
Away.
Or it could be just they were unlucky and had a meteorite hit them.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
what?
You didn't hear that? No, seriously. They found evidence that there is a Sodom and Gomorrah and that it was hit with some fiery nastiness from the sky.
And Mark, Karl's not wrong. There's been archaeological discoveries that have shown that there may have.
Way to give away the ending before we even get there, Karl. Great job. All right, that's our podcast for today. Hope you all have a great day, and thank you all for listening.
Don't ever take Karl to a movie. Jeez.
Or to South Korea.
Buzzkill.
Shawn, no, I was watching this Greek stuff, okay, and the Greeks were really good at the sexual part, which you were saying this too before the podcast to me, and I was kind of curious, so I had to watch something on it real quick. It was really important to status-wise your sexual, what you choose to do sexually, and so it's a really bad situation to be on the receiving end. So only younger people and women, because they were second-class citizens basically at the time,
and slaves,
yeah. So you didn't want to be in that category, because if you were, it's not that I guess some guys liked it that way. The reality was, it was socially.
Sure, some did.
Sure, I'm sure they did.
So you want to? Okay. So socially, what you're talking about is basically the sexual hierarchy of what the ancients their standards were. So I mean, to break it down into, if you were a freeborn male, you were considered to be the most dominant class of society. And so anybody that wasn't a freeborn male, color didn't matter, none of that mattered. It was all if you were considered freeborn. So if you were not freeborn, you were either, if you were not a freeborn male, you were a slave or a woman or a child. And so anybody other than freeborn males were considered to be down the line hierarchically, if I'm not saying that right. But so the sexual relationship today versus then. So today, I think everybody would say that it's about a reciprocal relationship, two people that are doing something together, right? That's culturally what we consider sexuality to be, right? Two people doing something together, that it's a reciprocal act.
Consensual, right?
Consensual, right. Two people doing something together. So it's supposed to be an equal partnership between two people nowadays. But back then, it wasn't about that at all. It was about domination. Basically, it was
so basically
one person was the active role and one person had a passive role. Insertive versus receptive.
Brent attacked me in the hotel room 2 weeks ago. That was he was trying to show dominance. Is that what you're trying to say?
Dominance.
Yeah.
No, but so really, so if I have slaves during that time, and I have two slaves, there's a man and a woman that are together, and they have a child, and I decide, man, I gotta unload. I could go in and take her and unload on her, pretty much, so, right? As sad as it is, like I have the right to go in and have sex with her. But then the question I ask is, let's say she gets pregnant. Is that child a slave because the mother's a slave, or is that child now become a free person because I was the free person?
I would have to look. I would have to look the laws up on that. I believe it depends on whether or not the perpetrator, the person who did
be like up to me.
I think it was up to them. I think if he denied paterfamilias, then, or being the father, then he would have then that would have been a slave child. Yeah. But I'm gonna go back a little bit on this. So biblically, when they're talking about going in and knowing those people at Sodom, it had nothing to do with the sexuality or man rape or whatever. It was
just like a sensual knowing.
Culturally, it was just,
know who they are.
It had nothing to do with homosexuality. It had to do with dominance, right? So that's where the confusion of modern, like I said earlier, when you put the two blueprints on top of one another and things don't look right, it's because the blueprints are culturally different. So that's why where
was Lot in this scale? Where was Lot at? Like, wasn't Lot a dominant person?
Yeah, Lot was a freeborn man. So yeah, he was at the top of the food chain, and that's why. That's why they didn't.
But they couldn't come in and take his people, though, could they?
They didn't ask him to come out. They asked him to send the men that were visitors out.
Right.
So,
but couldn't he say, "No, these are mine. These are my bitches"? You know, like, couldn't he have that right?
He could have. I don't know. Well, I don't know that.
We talked about Sodom. So, like, how does Gomorrah fit into this?
It's like the twin cities. They're just cities next to each other. So
they're right next to each other and stuff.
Yeah, so
it's like a metro area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. 100%. That's exactly what it was. Just two cities that are very close in proximity to each other. So it's that's why they get lumped in.
So let's talk about then, as they leave, did she really turn into a pillar of salt, or how?
So,
because a lot of things in the Bible are in translation, like examples, of what, stories.
Right.
But
So the way that I've heard it described is if you go into that area, and this has nothing to do with sexuality, but if you go into that area of the Dead Sea, there's a lot of salt pillars. And so there is a need at the time to explain why there is something that can't be explained. So they don't know the science of the Dead Sea and the salt content and all that like we do. And so to explain why there were salt pillars all over the place, they have in the story a something that happens where she becomes a pillar of salt. That is an explanation of why there are pillars of salt in the Dead Sea. So,
but there's like no human DNA inside any of those pillars of salt.
It has nothing to do with it. It's just a way for them to explain why there is something there that is for them unexplainable and something they can't understand. So does that make sense?
Now, at the site of Sodom and Gomorrah, they have found human DNA fragment or human skulls and bones.
But that's got nothing. That's just because people lived there. I mean, that's got nothing to do with.
That doesn't have anything to do with Lot.
That's got nothing to do with his wife's being turned into a pillar of salt, though. People lived there.
She probably just died in the fire. Probably
if she was even a real person. So
right.
Anyway,
right.
Yeah. So that's got nothing to do with any of that, though. It's not part of the topic of what happened in Sodom and why people misunderstand what the whole point of the destruction of Sodom was. So,
right. But it's a vital part of the lesson of obedience to what the Lord says. You must obey, and that trust and that faith to go along the line. And if you veer away from it, like the story says, she turned around to see what happened, and
right, yeah, I mean, it is that, yes, definitely.
I guess my question originally was how accurate and how, I mean, because I think these stories, it's just like the founding of Rome based on mythological gods that helped create Rome. A lot of these stories are stories that are embellished over years, decades, hundreds of years, thousands of years, and turn into legend or myth. And I think if you look at the Old Testament, how much of that is myth?
So I'm going to go back to what I was talking about with using ancient terminologies inappropriately for modern. So myth today, what a myth today is like a story that's not true, right? But myth,
Santa.
Myth back in ancient days, it wasn't about something that wasn't true. It was something regarding deity. Okay, so when you talk about
parable,
the ancient mythology, you're talking about ancient religion, right? Ancient religious beliefs, ancient gods. It has nothing to do with whether something is real or fake. So I can't remember why I started going down that road, but it's just an example of what anciently we don't understand because we're using modern terminology. So, I want to give you guys a couple of different things that regarding this stuff. So, Mesopotamian records talk about this is going back. I'm sorry, I'm doing a terrible job here explaining all of this, but so much of it's floating around in my head. But so going back to explaining how it's domination versus receiving, dominating versus receiving, right? So in some Mesopotamian records, it talks about how if a man is the person who's receiving, it defiles them and it makes them impure for a month, right? So and it doesn't distinguish whether it's a dude or a woman who he's being subservient to. So if anciently a woman being on top or being in power position, if you want to put it like that, made a man unclean, right? So the woman could never be on top. What do you?
I'm very
No
unclean.
reverse cowboy.
I'm the dirtiest guy you
No,
know,
No
man.
none of
reverse
that.
cowboy.
No.
Yeah.
The dirtiest guy you know.
So
Filthy
so
dirtiness.
yeah, terrible, right?
For months and months and
100%
months and
missionary.
months and months.
Because
I will be 158 by the time I'm clean again, judging by months.
So wait a second. In the true, what's the physiological posterior? Anyway, where they're facing the other direction than over the couch, that would be okay. That's what you're saying, Shawn.
yeah, because you're still the dominant person. So
Okay.
it goes back to dominance. It has nothing to do with consensuality. It's about dominance, right? So
S and M's
so
got it right then.
what if I start on
not
top?
Not necessarily.
What if I start on top
time,
and then we end with her on top? Then does she? Is it almost like a wrestling match? Like she's trying to get up on top and stuff?
No.
It's like no, yeah, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
could you do a circle?
Oh,
Yeah. Anyway, okay, Shawn.
I don't know.
That's
How would that work?
really good. I don't know.
There's also some Hebrew text that it says that if a man allows a woman to be the dominant partner, that he'll get diarrhea.
That's it. That's not too bad. Okay,
well,
that's acceptable.
You have to understand that at the time, something like that is considered to be very unclean, and so.
Well,
that's very unclean.
Well, when you're using your hand, that is pretty unclean. I mean.
So
I go and visit Shawn, and Shawn's got to keep running to the bathroom because he's got the runs, and I'd be like, "Damn his wife."
Yep.
You did this, Rachel.
Oh man. Yep. That's exactly what that would mean.
I'd be like, "No, it's bad tacos. It was bad tacos.
Had some bad fish." Okay.
There's some weird stuff that happened back then. I was looking at their bathroom techniques with the sea sponge and the sticks, and I'm like, oh. And then the poor guys, the people that didn't have the money, had to use stones. I mean, talk about chafed ass cheeks. I mean, ow.
Yeah, but it was also done completely. Like it wasn't the same as it is now. It wasn't for just pleasure and stuff like that. I mean, it was very clothed and this and that. It's not the same as it was. Now I'm sure there's some freaky deaky situations that went on. But for the most part, it was go.
Yeah, like you were there, Brent.
I think he wishes he was.
Like I said, 158 years old.
Yeah, Methuselah. All right.
So, well, you get into like New Testament writings, and you get into Paul. So Paul is often quoted with a lot of people when they're talking about homosexuality. Paul, a lot of people don't know, Paul was celibate. Paul thought sex was the only reason you had sex was to procreate, and that you should generally not have sex, even married people. You should only do it when you feel like you're getting out of control, and you should only do it when you're trying to have kids. And so,
correct.
It's
which that philosophy was adopted for centuries and centuries and centuries and centuries and centuries and centuries afterwards.
Yeah, so it's just very, very different. And the when I get into talking about Greek translations, ancient Greek, there's words. So something that I find fascinating, and I already kind of said this, but I really, really am curious about original Greek and Hebrew in the Bible, and what the words mean versus how it's been translated. Because there's, you read the King James version of the Bible, and it's really, I mean, frankly, it's terrible because there are so many things in it that are translated very poorly, and some of that is because it's a copy of a copy of a copy, right? It's a translation of Latin, which was translated from Greek, which was translated from Aramaic, right? So But so Paul used a term called I think it was sarcoheterous, and it's one of the words that basically in English it's translated as unnatural. So unnatural sex, right? But the word sarcoheterous actually means sex with angels, right? It has nothing to do with male sexuality, on male sexuality. It literally means sex with angels, and so an example of it he's using, I think it might be in Timothy or something like that. What unnatural flesh? They use the word unnatural flesh, but he's talking about sex with angels, how it's unnatural, right?
And it probably would be unnatural.
Hold on though. So let me ask this. Let me pose this question. You say unnatural, meaning natural being of this planet or of this
unnatural
earth.
Flesh, yeah. They're saying
right.
Unnatural.
But could it be flesh from another planet? Could it be flesh from another entity?
UFO. Here we go.
As we've talked about in the past.
You mean Kolob?
No. But I do mean people that are not of this earth. Unnatural flesh.
That's exactly what it's saying.
I know.
But it's not referring to people that are Martians. No, that's not what it's talking about.
How do you know that,
though?
Yeah. How do you know
because
that?
I'm just telling you very quickly, without having to go into it, they had no concept of people living on other planets. They had no concept of planets being...
They called those people angels.
They had no concept of that. At that time they thought that the Earth was like people lived in a bubble where there was a sea over the top of us, which is why there's blue in the sky and why it rains.
But they thought that angels came from the sky, right?
Right, because
they thought angels came from the sky.
But it had nothing to do with other planets. It had nothing to do with other planets.
Brent's going UFO on us. Just relax.
Hey, I'm just saying, where would those people from other planets come? They would come from this big blue ocean, just the same way that an angel would come down.
You're putting a modern blueprint over the top of an ancient blueprint.
There you go again.
They have nothing.
I know, but I'm trying to figure out what that really could have been.
It could be your Stargate idea, Brent.
Well, there you go. There's your Stargate thing from a few weeks ago.
There you go.
There you go, Brent. Wow.
Unnatural flesh.
Hey, Brent's just all about figuring out solutions to mythical questions, which in this case would be, I guess I'd agree with Brent.
But
how
to go back to what
going to have sex with a human being?
So you guys are crazy. So
I don't think we are, though. I mean, it's...
Here's the question that I want to bring up. I don't think I presented all of that real well, but how knowing what I just told you, where sexuality back then had nothing to do with sexuality between the sexes, it had everything to do with being the dominant person, whether you were a man, whether you were a woman, or whether you were a slave, or whether you were whatever, versus today, it being described as, homosexuality. They're completely very, very, very different. So how does that affect what we think today on those things?
Well, the patriarchy and the LGBTQ plus crowd would have a complete conniptions fit, but
what do you mean? No.
But Shawn, in order to answer your question, though, are we talking about
the opposite, Karl? It's the opposite.
And
you mean,
and are you talking about here in this country?
Disintegrated? Is that why?
Right.
What you were referring to?
Right, because religiosity today uses these things as examples as a way to condemn that stuff when that is not how. That isn't what it was.
It was a medieval construct, the whole Sodom and Gomorrah style. I mean, basically what you're saying is with the King James Version talking about the different translations. It's a construct created from medieval and Catholic theology that's developed over hundreds of years into this story that Sodom and Gomorrah are about gay people that were destroyed in a cataclysm created by God. So the story is completely false, is what you're saying, and it's
Yes.
based on a uh, completely different reason. So I don't know. I think that, to be honest, that's the first time I've ever heard this particular version of it, but it makes sense.
But you also have to realize there are still cultures today that adhere to that same type of principle. You have Muslims in the Middle East where the man is extremely dominant. The women
Mm-hmm.
are second-class citizens and have no voice. You have
Right. They're not a full person.
in these tribes, exactly. You have these tribes that are in the Amazon and
Right.
that are from
Right.
any bearing of the outside world at all, that it's that same type of principle. So yes, we as quote unquote modern civilization in this country do not view it in that same respect, but there's still several million people that adhere to that type of
Right.
society.
Well,
Right.
let's be frank. If all of a sudden there was an EMT and all our modern conveniences just disappeared like that, just gone, do you really think for 1 second that the strong wouldn't be the ones setting up the rules and the weak would have to just deal with it? Because that's exactly what would happen.
It's like that anyway. It's like that anyway without that happening.
Well,
Look at a COVID
no.
shutdown.
Well, yeah, but we still have modern. I mean, we still have some rules that protect those who.
But you still have the powerful that dictate what people can and can't do. It's still like that.
Yeah, well, that's a little extreme way to look at it, but okay, I can see your point though.
So you
Shawn, you were
want
going to say something?
I'm just thinking about we're going back into um, culturally back then, the different things. If you look biblically in I'm just using biblically because it's an easy source for people to look at. A lot of other sources are more difficult for people who don't know where to look. But if you look in the Bible, it never talks about sexuality between two women, right? It's always about the man. What is the man doing? What is it okay for the
Well,
man to do, or what it?
there's very little reference of women at all in the Bible anyway. I mean,
But that's part of my point, Brent, that women were not considered a full person, right? They couldn't own property, they couldn't
correct.
inherit anything. They were the property of their father until they were married, and at which point they became the property of their husband. So
Correct.
so culturally, again, sexuality goes back to a person who is the dominant person in the situation, not about two people who are trying to enjoy each other on a consensual basis. Is a completely different thing.
Because there were no homosexual long-term relationships in that time period. You're correct, Shawn. Because
No,
that would
you don't know that.
no,
There
no,
were.
We don't know that though.
I was just watching it a few minutes ago. They do talk about that.
You're watching
No,
homosexuals?
it was more of a choice by the dominant person in that household to have a relationship with a male, but to continue their seed and DNA in their family, they would have to have a wife, and a wife brought status too in terms of land, in terms of wealth,
and more than one wife did that too.
Because of joint families.
A homosexual relationship would not, and therefore
you're right.
would not be considered normal.
Right.
So yeah, I am right on that. So
yeah, you are.
So yeah, things are different now.
It's not to say that they didn't exist. They probably did in the background on things, but you're right. As far as all that other stuff is concerned, socially, it was between males and females, and males being obviously the dominant ones. So, but it was it's really interesting. I just think that for me, I grew up very being learning the very Christianized understanding of that, and um,
It is interesting.
as an adult, and actually learning about um, culture and anthropology of these ancient civilizations, to learn that it has nothing to do with any of that is really kind of fascinating. And um, I don't know. I wonder what people think about that, because it kind of kicks the chair out from underneath the people that are against people being able to love who they love.
Well, we've seen that for a very long time where people use religious scripture to push their own agenda
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah,
translate it how they want to push their own
yeah,
agenda. And as you were saying, you were talking earlier about, the history of the Bible, and then it's a gathering of books of story. I mean, the span of the book of Genesis is thousands of years. It's not like this all happened day after day after day after day after day, but you look at also how the actual Bible came about, and for centuries, people like you and I would not be able to have a Bible or to read the Bible ourselves. We were not allowed to do that. That was only read through the priest, or a
yeah.
father, or a religious
You're
figurehead
talking
at a church.
about medieval practices.
I'm talking about the process
Yeah,
of the Bible, and
yeah.
how, it was written by hundreds of monks that sat there and wrote down, and there were most likely ways of manipulating what they were actually writing down, and the translation process being lost, and through
So there,
many, many,
so
many
there's a term.
years. It's the same way of me telling you a story and
There's a
they're telling a
term
story
for
and they're
those
so
guys.
on.
They're called copyists. They're the dudes that basically sit down and rewrote word for word the biblical text.
Yeah,
And
the Knights of the
there's a
Kinko's.
lot
Oh,
of
so
so let me give you, if you're interested, and we could do another show on this, but let me give you an example of something that a copyist changed in from ancient text to what we have as modern. So in the story, I can't remember which book it is in, but the story of the woman at the well, I think, being uh, condemned. Right? They don't condemn you. Neither will I.
Right.
That story does not actually exist in the earliest of that scripture. And so more than likely that is an insertion of a story from a copyist versus what was actually written by the person, whoever it was that wrote, I think, the book of John. So that's an example of what you're talking about. Um, Oh,
Yeah.
but as far as the creation goes, I mean, the formulation of, like what you're talking about, the New Testament really didn't happen until about 400 AD, I think it is, or 400 CE. Um,
It was like it was like 398 or
yeah,
370, something like the Council of
yeah,
Nicaea,
Council of Nicaea. That um, the
where basically all the religious heads were put into a room and locked in
yep,
there, and were told, "Y'all come up with it, and if anybody leaves this door, they will be
yep,
killed.
and
So y'all figure this shit out and get it done, and then get
yep,
out."
the newly converted Roman emperor forced that on
Correct. Constantine, right?
Constantine. Yep. Yep, Constantine forced that. But going back to Old Testament stuff, did you know that that the what we call the Old Testament, the Jewish Bible, it wasn't ever even written down until the Babylonian exile, uh, the
Correct.
Second Temple
It
destruction.
was passed down.
Yeah, so before that everything was
Yep.
verbal. There was nothing written,
Right.
nothing. And
Right.
so, I mean, we can get into a lot of stuff on that. That is really, really fascinating.
hey guys, I'm gonna have to cut it short, and you guys can keep going if you want. But
I got
I
to
gotta
bail
go
too.
prove. I gotta prove to Brent that we actually landed on the moon. So I'll have pictures of proof later today that I'll put on the
You're going to the moon?
website. Yeah, we're going.
You're going to the
You're
moon?
gonna be on the moon?
No,
Nice.
Cape Canaveral, baby. Gonna show you NASA.
All right.
NASA.
Cool.
All right.
All right. Have
Not a
fun.
conspiracy,
We
Brent.
we can talk more about this stuff on a later podcast. I think it would be good. See you guys.
Good show, guys. Good show, guys. Great talking to you, and we'll talk to y'all later.
All right. Bye.